Welcome to the Montreal Forum with your host, Liam Maguire. This broadcast will be coming to you from left to right on your listening device.
Oh, man. I don't know about you, Grant, but I cannot do anything but smile anytime I hear Dick's voice. That'll probably continue for quite some time. Welcome, everybody, to the Montreal Forum. My name is Liam Maguire, part of Habs Cast Nation. And I am brought on this particular podcast, webcast, each and every time, courtesy of Hosey and Brown Automotive. My dear friend Rod Brown, there they are right there with their logo. And they will be celebrating 50 years in business next year. So thanks very much for their continued support. I'm going to bang out 30 or 40 minutes here as I do each week, talking all things Montreal Canadiens. And don't know if I'll deviate too much into those trades here in the last 48 to 72 hours, but really 4 quarters for a buck there, Pittsburgh, Edmonton, and with the goaltending, we'll see what happens there. Good job, Dubas, unloading the Skinner money. Edmonton had to, unloading the Jerry money. Edmonton had to move Skinner. He was going to be guilty no matter what going forward for the Edmonton Oilers, despite the fact in the last 2 years, they play 8 series. They've won 6, get to the finals, go 13 out of 14 games against Florida, but it's all his fault. I don't know, man. It's a tough trophy to win, and we'll see what happens here if there's any other changes down the road, or maybe Jerry will have some success where he did as a junior. He had a hell of a run there, as I think most are probably aware now, if you weren't before. The Memorial Cup in 2013 or 2014. So going back home in a sense that way, but we'll see. A couple other bit pieces involved in the deal as well. The big one really, Mr. Hughes finally going out of Vancouver for the package to Minnesota. You know what, at the end of the day, you got to give Bill Guerin a lot of credit right now. He had the guts to pull the trigger, and the rest we'll find out. You never make a judge right now. Usually the initial judge is who's the best player. Well, it's clearly Hughes going to Minnesota. They got, I think, a decent package back. They kind of gutted a little bit of the depth of Minnesota, who've been playing very well. That game, they beat Dallas there last week. It's one of the best games I've watched this year. And they've got a hell of a team. But at the end of the day, what do you do come playoff time? Like they're trying to get over that. Not the mushy middle. They've been above that for a little bit, but just get to that next level. Anyway, that's enough about the rest of the NHL for now. It's been dissected pretty good, probably on most sites that you follow elsewhere. Talking about the Habs right here in the news that just broke just a few hours ago about the passing of Bobby Rousseau. Man, oh man, it's when these guys go that are in their 80s, for guys of my vintage, it sure brings back a lot of memories. And I am going to date myself here for sure. Definitely no spring chicken anymore. But if you are in and around my age, you'll know of what I'm about to talk about immediately. Back in the day, as we like to say, late 60s, early 70s, depending on what cereal you ate, they used to have these little marbles. Well, they looked like marbles. They weren't actually marbles. They were plastic. And they were probably smaller than a real marble, but just. And it was the Montreal Canadiens and Toronto Maple Leafs, and they would be in the box, and you'd get these, and you'd try and collect them. They weren't quite as popular as hockey cards, but I understand it. If you have any now, and they're in decent shape, like anything else, they'd be worth a couple bucks. But what I heard just a short while ago, I want to thank my friend Rob Drapeau, was first to alert me of it. A little while ago, a little less than 2 hours ago, of Bobby's passing, and I've already read a great tribute. I know he'll do one a little later on, as he always does. Dave Stubbs, just an amazing historian in his own right, and has written a little something. Look for it if you can, if you follow Dave anywhere, and I think he'll do something else. Myself, my first memory when I heard it was of that little marble of getting Bobby Rousseau. Obviously, as a Habs fan, I wanted to get as many Habs as I could, especially Yvon Cornwallier, my favorite player. I could never get Beliveau. You could never get Jean for whatever reason. I could never get him. I don't care how much cereal I ate. I would eat until I was bursting. My mom, I need more. We need more cereal. Need more cereal. Could never get a Jean Bello. You get Dick Duff, Ralph Backstrom, J.C. Tremblay. Get a lot of J.C. Tremblay, or you'd get the dreaded Toronto Maple Leafs. I must have got 15 Norm Almonds, and then the irony is, I remember I got a few Paul Hendersons, and think about that. What happened? This is in the late '60s, and think about what happened just a few years later. This marketing promotion went on for probably about 3 or 4 years. I want to say 68, 71, in and around that era. But the first thing I thought of when I heard that Bobby had passed was getting those and collecting them and trying to collect the set as best you could anyway. And I remember Jim Dory and Mike Walton were a couple of the Leafs that I got a lot as well. And I don't know if I got a Dave Keon. Keon and Beliveau were kind of the two guys. They probably put less in there, the way it worked. Same thing for hockey cards in those days. But Bobby had one heck of a career. I mean, he really did. He came onto the scene. He played for the Ottawa Hull Canadiens. Montreal Protect, territorial protect is how the Canadiens secured his rights. They put him on their junior team, the Ottawa Hull Canadiens, and he played there for, I think, 4 years. He went to 2 Memorial Cup finals, went in 57, and he won in 58. Sam Pollock was coaching. Scotty Bowman was the assistant coach. Like, you wonder about the success of the Habs over an extended period of time. I've written about this many, many times, debunking the French-Canadian BS thing that people talk about. They have no idea what they're talking about. Not going down that road today, but when Frank Selke Sr. got hired as general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, his first hire was Sam Pollock in 1947, who he had heard about running all the infrastructure of amateur sports in Montreal. He never played. He just was a genius. And Frank interviewed him and hired him. And later on, when Scotty Bowman's career ended, largely due to the stick from Jean-Guy Talbot and Jr., Sam hired Scotty. And they were coaching and running the Ottawa Hull Canadiens when Bobby Rousseau came on the scene and became an instant star. He was an unbelievable junior, as I said, winning a Memorial Cup. He turns pro, playing senior. They lend him to Kitchener, who competed in the 1960 Olympics. I think that was a Dutchman, Kitchener-Waterloo Dutchman, I think was their full name. Might be wrong there, but I think that's what it was. Anyway, they won a silver medal. It was no playoff in those days. That's the Americans won. That was in Squaw Valley. 20 years before Miracle. The Americans won a gold medal. Let's hope that's no foreshadowing here that I'm even saying this. But Bobby wins a silver medal for Canada and then turns pro. I should say he was already pro, but joins the Montreal Canadiens shortly after. And I love talking about guys' first goals in the NHL because it's cool who, like, I just finished on the road with 4 or 5 days out east working with the Legend Group out of St. John, New Brunswick. And on our group was former Montreal Canadian Matthew Dandino. Now, I say former Montreal Canadian. He won his Stanley Cups with the Detroit Red Wings, but he finished his career with the Montreal Canadiens. He's a pretty solid defenseman, still in great shape and can skate, shoot. He's such a fun guy. His first goal in the NHL was assisted by Steve Yzerman and Nick Lidstrom. I mean, that's pretty tough to beat. Look at Bobby Rousseau's first goal in the NHL, November 10th, 1960, assisted by Jean Beliveau and Boom Boom Jaffriot. G'day. I mean, nice start to your NHL career. His first number was 24, but we'll always remember him in Montreal as 15. Just about every single guy that came up at that time had a different number to start. They just become trivia questions. But everyone will remember him as number 15. And he, within a couple of years, he was a serious offensive force on the Montreal Canadiens. He was right there with Beliveau and Henri Richard. Grant and I were talking about an hour ago about the show today. And I said, I just want to tell very quickly the story, those early 60s Montreal Canadiens. Rocket's retirement in September of 1960 was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. I think the story's well documented. He scored 2 goals and 2 assists in the morning scrimmage. He was flying. He was 39 years old. He got pushed out. That's not going to go down all these backstories, but they're out there. Maybe other shows. Bottom line is, the team, the organization, which knew it was coming, but the players didn't. They had to get a captain right away to replace him. There's no talk like today. Still have 2 teams don't have a C right now out of the 32. It's, the Bruins won cups in 1772 with nobody wearing the C. So but 10 years earlier still was unheard of. You were going to name a captain, and Doug Harvey got it. It was not a popular decision. Beliveau would get it a year later, but it was turmoil in Montreal in the early 60s and so much pressure on Jean. He had a hard time coping. And some of the changes that happened when he was able to start to recoup some of the offense that was lost as guys were getting older. Boom Boom was going to move on eventually. Dickie Moore was going to move on eventually. Bobby Rousseau filled that void. Grant, if you have his hockey DB numbers and you bring those up, we'll show them to you, people. From a period of 7 years, 7 seasons, he was in the top 4 in scoring on the Montreal Canadiens. There they are there. Thanks, Grant, for that. And I'll just bring these up here too and show you people there that from 1963 until 1969, those years inclusive, he was in the top 4 in scoring. And on 2 occasions, he led Montreal in scoring. 1 year, Jean suffered a lot of injuries there in and around the 63 to 66 mark. He had a great playoff, obviously, in 65 and won the Conn Smythe Trophy. Close vote over the pocket. But Bobby had a great playoff that year, too. And he just became an integral part of the offense of the Montreal Canadiens as they transitioned into what Jean Beliveau used to refer to as the forgotten dynasty. I mean, they made 5 finals in a row. It never gets talked about because it was interrupted by that Leaf win in 67. But Bobby went on to play just under 1,000 games, scored almost 250 goals. He went to Minnesota. He was with the New York Rangers when they went to the final in 72, sadly beating out his old team, Montreal, in the quarterfinals that year. That was tough pill to swallow as a 13-year-old. But, just a great career. He got in the golf business post-career. And I guess cannot talk about his 5-goal game in February of 64. By the way, that first goal he scored, speaking of the Olympics, he scored that goal. That game was crazy. Montreal beat the Rangers 9-7. As I said, Beliveau and Geoffrion got the assists. Jack McCartan was the Ranger goalie. He was supposed to maybe be he had won the gold medal in Squaw Valley for the States, and they thought, oh, he's going to come in. Kind of similar, really, to the Jim Craig scenario, if you think about it. It's got a lot of similarities, man. And where Jim never really got it going in Boston and Atlanta, and McCartan never really got it going in the Rangers. But he was in the net in the night that Montreal beat the Rangers 9-7 when Rousseau got his first goal. Who the hell was in nets for Montreal? Well, sad to say it was Jacques Plante. But, and told Blake was just screaming at him after the game to take that friggin' mask off. He'd been wearing the mask for a year. He took it off for one game. They beat Detroit. And he said, Toe, I'm never going without it again. That night, boy, Toe was, as I heard, I talked to many guys back in the day about that. And Toe was all over him saying, take it off. Of course, 3 years later, speaking of goalie trades, Montreal would make a 7-player deal where Plante would go to the Rangers and the Habs would pick up Gunt Worsley. Again, another story for another time. Rousseau, that was his first goal against Jack McCartan, his 5-goal game. So he has a 5-goal game. February 1st, 64, I believe it was, against the Detroit Red Wings, 9-3 final. And that goaltender was Roger Crozier. It was he was a rookie. He was still classified as a rookie the next year because that season, Rousseau won he had won the Rookie of the Year in 61, 62. 63, 64 was another Montreal Canadian, Jacques Laperriere. And then Crozier was still eligible to be a rookie the following season, who Bobby got his 5 goals against. Interestingly enough, Henri Richard had 5 assists. Now, 4 of them were on Rousseau's goals. He assisted 4 of the 5. He assisted on one of Yvon Cornway's, who scored twice that night. But I digress. Anyway, there's some offensive contributions of Rousseau and some childhood memories, man, of that little Marvel. I can see his picture. I can see his face clear as day. You know, there's been about 15 or 16 three-brother combinations in NHL history. The Russos are one of them. His two brothers only had cups of coffee in the NHL, but Guy and Roland both played, and they certainly had long pro careers, but they did have NHL time, making them an official three-brother combination. So it's another little anecdote about the family. But he passed away, I'm assuming earlier this morning or yesterday, and at the age of 85, and he'll be remembered as a tremendous contributor to 4 Stanley Cups, an outstanding career, an outstanding post-career in the golf industry, and definitely left his mark and a legacy statistically and historically, and has a champion with the Habs, and that's what this show is, right? The Montreal Forum on Habscast. So may you rest in peace, Mr. Rousseau. God bless your memory, sir. Moving on. Well, what else? I mean, Jacob Fowler. He's the talk of the league right now. Notwithstanding Connor Bedard getting hurt in the last second of that game last night. No updates on that other than he's not playing tonight. But Jacob Fowler became the 7th youngest goalie in Montreal Canadiens history to record a win. Now, 2 of them were emergency replacements in the 1950s. So for all intent and purposes, he's really the 5th. Among the names ahead of him are, you know, guys like Jose Theodore and Carey Price. And I mean, he's in exalted territory. Now, however, Caden Primo was also ahead of him as a younger goalie. So which his career is he going to follow? I mean, it was an outstanding start. Let's be honest. He looked so calm and composed back there. I was a little chagrined because the Habs looked so solid in the first 20, 30 minutes of that game. And you knew, you could feel it. You could watch it and you could see it, that they were battening down the hatches and played one of their better games. I'd like to think maybe switching up the D pairing helped a little bit. That was Noah Dobson's one of his better games in a while. I think he has kind of struggled a little bit lately. Lane had an outstanding game, although he's been pretty consistent. Excuse me as my dog walks by. And you know, just an unbelievable game from Fowler. He faces 38 shots, make 36 saves. I think Crosby had 7 on net. 2 or 3 were 10-bellers. I mean, he made some outstanding saves. He had no chance on either goal. He deserved the win. And I hope we're seeing him tonight. We're taping this, and not taping this. We're going live here at 12:17 Eastern, and I haven't seen any report otherwise yet. As everybody knows, the Habs got 2 games this weekend. Neither one will be easy. It's always tough to win in New York, despite their struggles there this year. It's a game Montreal could and should, and I'm expecting a win, and I hope to see Fowler in net. I would very much like to see him play tonight, and we'll address tomorrow night when it comes. I would call Dobish right now, but we'll see. Let's see what we'll get there. We'll cross that bridge when we get through tonight. But at the end of the day, I hope Arber's back in. I think I couldn't believe he was out. Absolutely could not believe. I know you weren't going to pull Carrier, though he just had his 2 or 3 worst games as a Montreal Canadian leading up to last game, and he did bounce back, and he played better. Struble, I think, has been struggling, and I hope we're going to get into some sort of platooning situation here. I know we're still probably a month away from Gooley, but I'd like to see Arber back in tonight, if not the weekend. However, neither here nor there. On Fowler, he became the 91st goaltender in Montreal Canadian history to suit up in a regular season game since 1917, and the 7th youngest to record a win. As I said, includes a couple guys who actually only played 1 game in the NHL. So those are other stories for other days in the summer, maybe when we're doing nothing but pure hardcore history and trivia and stats. And I'll tell you a little bit about those guys. As it is right now, there you go, Jacob Fowler. 21 years and days, and looked fantastic. I know we're going to see him for sure at some point this weekend. I hope it's tonight, and we'll see how it goes. You know, Suzuki is on pace for 92 points. His career high is 89. Cole's on pace for 42 goals. His career high is 37. These were both set last year. This, of course, can change right day to day. But you know, we're We're 37% of the way into the season. Yes, I know, a little ridiculous to say it, break it down like that, but I was checking that out. We're long past just the early days here of the season, and the Habs are currently tied for because Pittsburgh and Philly have played one less game, even though they're tied in points, they do have that margin of victory for the wild card spot. So these points are all critical. This is your proverbial 4-pointer tonight. The Rangers are a point back. The Habs got 2 games in hand. Hey, it's monstrous. I mean, I don't recall another season like it. It's unbelievable. Certainly in the East, because you got a couple languishing a little bit in the West that are sort of out of it. In the East here, Buffalo's hanging around and looking available still at the bottom, and Toronto's made a bit of a push here to come up. Ottawa had a big win against Columbus, and everybody's a couple wins away from being top 3 in the Atlantic. I mean, it's unbelievable. We had Detroit there just 3-4 days ago. It's unbelievable. So these games are monstrous. These points are huge. Scrape and claw and scratch and fight to get every point you got. And hopefully we have a good weekend here. But I was saying about Nick and Cole, that's where their paces are right now. Earlier, Nick was on pace for around 100, a little over. He's dropped down a little bit, but he's still ahead of his career best, as is Cole, and as are the Canadiens. They're on pace right now for 96 points. That would be their 5th year improving. The NHL record's 8 by San Jose. The Islanders did 5, leading up to their run of 5 straight finals and 4 cups and 19 consecutive playoff series wins. So, the Habs are in good company in that sense. And as a fan base, we got to relax. We got to relax sometimes, have a Coke and a smile and just relax. I mean, the bottom hasn't fallen off despite that 5-game losing streak that kind of set the table for the tumble. We've picked up some wins. We bounced back with points in 3 out of 4 games and 3 wins there. And then it's kind of been 500 since, and win 2 and get points in 2 type thing. But huge win going into Pittsburgh. I'll say something else too. I haven't watched a ton of Penguins games this year. Man, they're that power play. They got caught in the Fowler vortex there. The Habs played kitty bar the door. They played one of their best defensive structured game. Give the coaching staff credit for mixing up the D a little bit. Let's see it again tonight. Let's see how Lane and Noah, let's see how that looks again tonight. See if they make a change on the bottom 6. Not probably critical if they don't. That's just personal opinion. But I liked what they did, and we all had to like what they did. And look, Cappy's goal was monstrous, right? When they made it 3-1 and we come right back and make it 4. So this is good. These are good things. And let's see that continue tonight and hang around right there in that, just creeping maybe into that top 3 or certainly up in the top 4 of the Atlantic, which will keep us in the wild card conversation, if not a chance to stay within shouting distance of the top 3. So it's exciting times. I know we get down very quickly. We live vicariously now through this team period by period because of social media. It's just the way it is. Because if you're watching this, you're probably an ardent social media viewer. You consume probably the majority of your information that way. And I've often said, if you go to the Bell Center and there's 21,286 people, or whatever the sellout number is, the overwhelming majority, I don't believe, are rushing home to check Twitter, or check whatever your social media. It's only a live broadcast. Maverick decides to make an appearance. He's 6 months old, and he's a handful. Apologies on that. Can't even start to play with him because he'll start. You can hear his toy there now. I'll try and throw it away. So it's. Oh man, what are you gonna do? I'm sitting at home here. Gotta love it. Anyway, it's a work in progress when you're this young of a roster, and yet the excitement level for me remains at absolute maximum. It is the most excited I have been about a Montreal team with this much youth in 40 years, and the most excitement overall really since Bob Gainey really was taking over the reins with the Habs. Yeah, there's Okay, here we go. What do we got? Fowler gets the start on Saturday. Evans and Xhekaj back in. Davidson and Struble out. Thank you, Grant, for posting that up as quickly as you did. There we go. Live, up-to-the-date information. Grant, thank you. That was great. So this is great. Me personally, well, we knew Jake was coming back. And I think this is the right call, giving Arber a game. I thought the 2 or 3 games previous, he had looked pretty good. Him and Struble, they just get dissected to the zenith. We just got to let these guys breathe a little bit. And if you got to platoon them and give them their game so they stay relatively game fresh and they get an opportunity where they're not missing too many in a row. I think this is the right call. And Fowler tonight playing is the right call as well. And let's just see how it goes. I'm really, really anxious to see it. It's just an exciting time and to be a Montreal fan. Demidov, keep shooting the puck, kid. I mean, holy lifting. He gets in there sometimes, and I just wish he'd let that rubber go. He had a great chance against Pittsburgh, too, where he passed it off. But, again, picked up another point. Slav, I want to talk about Slav just for a second or two here. I won't stay on too much longer, folks. But, man, oh, man, this guy is really I mean, he is growing in leaps and bounds in front of us. Eric Macramella, who's part of our Habs Cast Nation here, I think it was his tweet I'm pretty sure it was his that I saw that he put it out, that this is not the guy that in many instances was on the receiving end or the wrong end of hits and falling like Bambi in that first year. We just forget how freaking young these guys are. Demidov just turned 20, but Slav against Pittsburgh had 6 or 7 shifts. I know he had 2 assists too. Like, he's growing in leaps and bounds. We may never see it in terms of a point a game guy, and we don't need that necessarily from him. If he can develop into a consistent contributor in a top 6 role, and by that I mean second line, obviously, where he's spent the majority of the last 4 to 5 weeks, with a couple of rare exceptions, and his physicality and the way he is starting to control the puck down low. You look at the last few games in particular, he's not throwing it away. The one thing that drives me crazy, this isn't just on him. This is even when I coached. A back pass is a gift to the opposition 90% of the time. Your teammates don't know where it's going. You don't know where it's going. You think somebody's there. I hate it. Anyway, small digression. But Slav, and he's been guilty of those a few times, so has other players across the league. This is a blanket statement, not just against Montreal or Slav or anybody. I just hate the back pass in general. Unless it's Gretzky. He's about the only guy. But anyway, Slav's play in the last few games, man. Oh, geez. I really think we've got a blue chipper here, and it's going to manifest itself in so many different ways than on the scoreboard. And yet, here we are with, he's on pace, just marginally ahead of he's had back-to-back just over 50 points. He's on pace for 54 right now. So let's see what happens, man. There's tons of hockey to go. He could bump that up, maybe get around 60. Wouldn't that be great? Especially if he's on the right side of the puck in the O-zone, because his vision looks like he's settling in. He's settling into the league and adjusting to the pace and making better decisions. And he's growing into his body and using his size. And it is just something to behold. And just the last few games in particular, it's the sky's the ceiling with this guy. It really is, because I really think potentially he could produce better numbers. All I'm saying is that we don't necessarily need it. We still sit tied for 8th or 9th in scoring and goals for in the NHL. We're at 95. Our goals against, obviously, is where the pain has come this season, and our penalty killing. I think we all felt losing Armia was something that had to happen. Ironically, he's leading the league in shorthanded goals right now in LA. And it's a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's a transition that had to be made. And I guess so. I said that, or tried to convince my heart on that about Lehkonen. It was tough. it's tough watching what he's done there in Colorado, man. Holy lifting, especially when he's the guy who got us in that final in 2021, right? He scored the series clincher against Vegas, and he played so well for us. He just couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and then it just became a spot in Colorado where I think they could place him better, and he really found his niche. And of course, when you've got, they're a wagon right now. Oh my God, aren't they? They are really, really, they're must-watch TV if you get a chance. Usually they're a later game too, so you could throw an eyeball on it, folks, if you can. You won't be disappointed from an entertainment point of view. So, but really impressed with Slav. Lane, phenomenal game last game. Hudson, one of his best games the last month. Fowler's the story for sure now, thanks to Grant posting it. You've probably seen it as well, folks, if you're watching live, that he'll be getting a start tonight. Arber's in, Strube's out, and Evans back. So there you go. That's it. Let's just see how it goes. I generally try and keep these tight to 30 minutes, so I'll finish on this day in hockey for the Montreal Canadiens. Not a lot. However, one thing pretty significant, it's Bob Gainey's birthday. Bob Gainey is 71 years old today. And when I woke up this morning and I thought the date, I always think of the date and what happened in Montreal's history. Oh my God, it's Bob's birthday. And then he's 71, and I just can't picture him. I was in the Forum when they won the Cup in 79. It was the day before my 20th birthday. So it was my last night as a teenager, May 21, 79. I was in the Forum, and I watched the Habs carry Gainey off the ice on their shoulder after he won the Conn Smythe Trophy, which prompted that famous quote from Anatoly Tarasov, who was the first Russian ever inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. First Russian, getting semantics there. He had some guys back in the day who were born in Russia, grew up here. Again, more historical stories for down the road. But Tarasov's famous quote about Bob Gainey being the best hockey player on the planet Earth at that time in hockey. It's interesting because of the game that Gainey played. Anyway, deserved Conn Smythe that year, and Stanley Cup carried off the ice. And you're telling me this guy is 71 today? Boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's hard to imagine. But only other thing of note, and this is really statistical, but because it involves Jean Beliveau, I'm going to say it. Beliveau got his 800th career point on this day in 1964. December 13th, 1964, the Montreal Canadiens beat the Boston Bruins 5-4, and Beliveau assisted on a goal scored by Gilles Tremblay. Jacques Laperriere recorded the other assist, and this was the season where 64-65, where the Canadiens bounced back and won their first Stanley Cup post-Rocket Richard, and began, as Jean used to call it, the quiet dynasty, the unknown dynasty, with the 5 straight finals. But interestingly enough, in that game, and I'm sorry for the digression here, but I got to say it, Habs were getting pounded in that game. They scored 4 goals in the last 10 minutes against Boston to come back and win 5-4. They scored 2 in the last $1.53. Henri Richard, and a name probably most of you won't remember, but Dave Ballon got the other one, and Montreal came back to win 5-4. Beliveau gets his 800th career point. At the time, only the Rocket was ahead of him on the Habs. So, as we all know, we just passed the anniversary of Le Gros Bill's passing, and that was a service for the ages, that's for sure. So we remember those today. We started with Bobby Rousseau. We finished with a historical note on Jean Beliveau. They're from that great era, and we remember them both. And tonight we cheer on the new model, the Jacob Fowlers and the Lane Hudsons and the Cole Caulfields and Nick Suzuki's, and hope that with failing hands that the torch is being passed right in front of our eyes here. And we're on the verge of seeing something really, really special in Montreal. Even Maverick's excited. He's got a new bone. That's going to do it for me here on the Montreal Forum. I'm Liam Maguire on behalf of Grant McCagg, part of Habs Cast Nation, brought to you by Hosey and Brown Automotive. Go Habs, go. G'day.